Tricia, this is Commissioner Bookacek. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Patricia, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
I turned up volume all the way and I can't hear you. Can you hear me?
Testing, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Thank you so much, Patricia.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. This meeting is called to order. For the record, the time is 1:04 p.m. The date is September 3rd, 2025. The commission and its staff are appearing from right here in the Bollinger Room at the Public Service Commission in Helena. I am Commissioner Jeff Wellborn, presiding over the meeting today as the chair. Would you all please join me in reciting the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, thank you. For the record, the following commissioners are appearing in person: Vice President Fielder, Commissioner Pinocci, President Molnar, and Commissioner Bukasek is appearing remotely, and myself. So it looks like there are 5 of 5 commissioners here, and a quorum is satisfied. We will move into the public comment period. I believe there are some people in the room looking to give public comment. Is Diane Lake here? Would you step up, please? There are. Okay.
Hello, Chairman and Commissioners. My name is Patricia Troyan, last name Troien. I am a resident of Helena and a ratepayer and the Commission Secretary here at the department. For almost 5 years at the PSC. Okay, do you want me to start over? Hello, Chairman and Commissioners. My name, for the record, is Patricia Troyan, last name Troien. And I am a resident of Helena, a ratepayer, and Commission Secretary for this department. For almost 5 years at the PSC, I've had the pleasure of working with some of the most talented, dedicated, and committed staff. And I care for these people with whom I work. Today, I would like to comment on Commissioner Fielder's letter to the governor dated August 20th, 2025. I believe recalling this letter to the governor would have long-lasting negative consequences for the commission. I believe the investigation of allegations of misconduct in the workplace must be allowed to go forward with full cooperation from President Molnar. I have seen a number of ups and downs during my tenure as short as it is compared to others here. Overall, the ups have gained momentum, creating a better workplace environment until recently, that is. As Commissioner Fielder's letter to the governor states, the earliest formal complaint was filed in May of 2025. There are staff among us that have voiced complaints regarding President Molnar's workplace conduct, and these complainants not only need to be heard, but also have a right to be heard while being protected confidentiality. President Molnar, we have shared many conversations on many topics regarding work, our parents, our kids, our grandkids, and travel. I have personally seen your good heart, and I believe you have the capacity to be empathetic, compassionate, and fair. Your refusal to participate in the investigation is causing damage to you, those around you, and this agency. As president, you have an obligation to this agency to take full responsibility for your actions and the perceptions of your actions. I ask you, please take ownership of your actions by participating in the investigation. Commissioners, I ask all of you to carefully consider your actions today and consider the toll this situation has already taken on commissioners and staff. Recalling Commissioner Fielder's letter would effectively send a message to all staff, loud and clear: you don't matter. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. You said there were two in addition? Okay. Welcome.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Can you hear me okay? My name is Alana Lake. You know me well. I'm your Executive Director and Chief of Staff. I will say my comments today do not reflect the agency and are solely my own. My name is spelt L-A-K-E for the record. Coming up here today and speaking is truthfully the last thing I want to do, but I feel compelled to speak in response to the discussion surrounding the response team's letter to Governor Gianforte. It is my understanding that President Molnar wishes to rescind this letter. Let me begin by saying, I have deep respect for all of the commissioners, and especially for President Molnar, whose experience and insight in regulatory matters adds immense value to this agency. His commitment to representing the people we serve, along with his ability to craft creative solutions to complex challenges, is precisely why Montanans entrusted him with this role. At the same time, I must affirm my own commitment to two principles that I believe lie at the heart of Montana's strength: transparency and due process. As a lifelong Montanan, I know these values are what set our state apart, and I believe they must continue to guide our work here today. However, while elected to serve the people, commissioners are not above the law, and there must be processes to hold commissioners responsible for their actions. As Chief of Staff of this agency, I am a member of management. As a member of management, I am obligated to address reports of discrimination, harassment, retaliation, and violations of our Code of Conduct policy. I am also charged with safeguarding the processes by which complaints are addressed. It is critical that the process is safeguarded to ensure individuals feel able to come forward with legitimate concerns without fearing retaliation, public embarrassment, or other negative consequences. By law, when receiving reports of retaliation, I am required to not only address the issue, but to take steps to ensure it does not happen again. In this instance, I and other members of management took all necessary and lawful steps to address complaints when they came forward. We began with the lowest levels and were forced to continue to escalate the issue when multiple attempts to address the issues were not successful. Statements made to the media that conversations to address the issue and multiple internal counseling sessions were not completed are simply not true. Due to the complaints being brought forward against the president of this agency, who is my direct supervisor and therefore at the top of our chain of command, there were no other options than to seek outside investigative support to address the issues after less formal attempts failed. Upon learning of the investigation and told both verbally and in writing that retaliation was illegal, President Molnar told me directly he would take out anyone who was involved in the process against him. He told me he had hired an attorney and a private investigator to go after these individuals. Despite requests to keep an administrative issue confidential, as required by law, President Molnar then held a press conference to air the issue to the public and dropped my name and others and insinuated that I was siding with the utilities. I have been sworn at, I have been yelled at, I have been disparaged for hiring an outside investigator to address the issues. These are just a few examples of what myself and many others in the staff have continued to experience. Out of respect for my colleagues, I won't go into detail about the retaliation I have observed targeting them. Particularly disappointing was the attempt, which is ongoing, to tie the investigation to regulatory business. Statements were made to suggest that the investigation was a political tool to retaliate against or undermine President Molnar's ability to fight for the people against the utilities, mergers, or big data centers. The attempts to twist the narrative to build public support for President Molnar has been nothing short of skillful political theater. It makes great headlines, but unfortunately, it is not truthful. I will tell you that retaliation has continued, remains ongoing, and has escalated over the past few months. I have exhausted all the tools I have as the Chief of Staff to protect our staff and commissioners from retaliation. As detailed in the response team's letter to the governor, this is the reason for the request for temporary administrative leave. In discussions with our state administration office, any state employee that acted in the manner President Molnar has would have been immediately placed on administrative leave. However, our Department of Administration is not able to address the issue for elected officials. Only the governor can. The impacts of President Molnar's actions have been great. It is extremely disappointing to see constant news articles targeting both commissioners and staff who have courageously worked to ensure the process for addressing complaints and retaliation is done in a lawful manner. Internally, it is frustrating to see roles attempt to be undermined and constant tension and conflict. I'm deeply concerned not only about the witness intimidation in this current matter, but also about the broader effects on our agency. Staff morale is shaken. Hiring, retention, and departures are now very real risks. And perhaps most troubling of all, we face a chilling effect. Employees will think twice before coming forward in the future with concerns about retaliation, discrimination, or harassment, fearing too that they too could become the subject of a public spectacle. This is not the type of culture that sustains a healthy state agency, or any organization for that matter. It undermines trust, discourages accountability, and weakens our ability to serve the people of Montana. I urge the commissioners to carefully consider the gravity of these impacts, not only on our agency, but on the integrity of our state as a whole. And I urge the governor's office to take the difficult but necessary steps to support us in safeguarding this process and restoring confidence in our work. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Further commenters in the room, Diane Lake. Welcome. Sit anywhere that's comfortable and make sure the little green light on the microphone is on, please.
Oh, it wasn't green enough. Okay, I'll start over. Bright green. All right, my name is Diane Lake, L-A-K-E. I am here as a member of the public, which of course the Public Service Commission is intended to serve. And I have been concerned by what appears to be retaliatory comments in the media. So let me say I fully support the response team's email to the governor's office and feel that the investigation should be safeguarded and there should be no harassment for those who are simply trying to do their job. Specifically on July 30th, I saw a comment that was made to the Daily Montanan, which President Molnar said about Alana Lake, that she fired up the other commissioners because Northwestern went crying to her. I see that as very unprofessional and slanted against her. Another comment said that Miss Lake darn near breaks into tears when he asks questions about Northwestern. I have to say that Miss Lake was in the Air Force for 10 years and proudly served her country overseas multiple tours in the Middle East. She's been shot at and in great danger. I fully doubt that she was about to burst into tears on any occasion because of somebody asking her some questions. There have been a number of, I would say, correspondence, whether it's in texts or emails, things that I have either heard or seen and know that they exist, in which you are speaking very derogatorily to the staff about her and to her. I find that very unprofessional and concerning. I would like to see it stopped. I would like to see the process work. I would like to see him, yes, on temporary on administrative lead. Let the process work. If he is innocent, if Brad Molnar is innocent, then that should come to light and he will have nothing to fear. Let the process work. Let the email go to the governor. Thank you.
Thank you. Further commenters in the room? Any others in the room? We'll move to the online commenters. We'll just go right down the line in the order they're on my sheet. Is Carla Johnson online?
Yes,
Thank you. Go ahead whenever you're ready. Welcome.
yes, thank you. Carla Johnson, Zerke, Montana. I'm not really sure. Can you give me like an understanding of what exactly is? It just seems to me that Brad Molnar, who is my public service commissioner, is kind of not really been given his constitutional rights in this. So could you explain it a little bit further what your guys are trying to do right now? Because to me, it seems like it's something that's not really fair.
Duly noted. You're most welcome to stay tuned into the meeting. I'm sure there will be some things come out in the discussion that we have later.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that.
Thank you. Is that thanks for weighing in today, Ms. Johnson. Jeff Pattison, are you online?
Yes, I am. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir. Go ahead
Thank-
whenever you're ready. Welcome.
Thank you, Commissioner. Well-born. For the record, my name is Jeff Pattison. Last name is spelled Pattison. As a potential candidate for the Public Service Commission after Commissioner Pinochi terms out, I've been on the trail already talking to different people about what the service does and the commission is supposed to do. And I'm not here calling in today to defend nor attack President Molnar. I don't quite understand your rules of governance when you have one person that decides what you can do to write a letter of accusation on another commissioner. Maybe that's the way you have it set up. I would hope that's not the case, but it sure seems that way. And talking with people in the Hinter realm, they're a little confused, as the previous caller, Miss Johnson, talked about. There's a lot of consternation and confusion out in our districts as to what is really going on here and how one person can sign on the letter and make accusations to somebody else. I thought it was a policy, and probably a better policy if it isn't, to have a meeting and have a vote from all four commissioners or five on an action taken on that nature of that magnitude. I kind of find it a little bit disturbing, and hopefully that that we can find a reasonable way through and to a conclusion that is satisfactory in a way that doesn't violate amendments, First or 14th Amendment, because honestly, nobody's above the law or beneath the law, either one. I think everybody has a right to be heard and a right to trial. I believe that a person in my heart should follow the premise of innocent till proven guilty. And this kind of smacks of the opposite. I don't know all the details, of course, and I don't really have to, and don't have to be privy to it. I'm just stating a fact, talking with the people in all of your commissioners' areas. The people are disgusted with what's going on, and it seems a little bit of a defunct deal there. It almost smacks as being a, call it a palace coup. Um, and I just hope that you guys can resolve this thing quickly and amicably. And gosh, you got 5 Republicans up there, and the Republican Party is really taking a hit. Now, I'm not trying to be political or partisan, but I'm just saying, as a member of that party, it's a little bit disturbing to see which direction we're going with the infighting and all the other stuff that's going on there. So I would say shape up. We need to get this thing straightened out. But whatever it is, I would like to see a majority of you should have voted on that letter. That's my premise, first and foremost. The second thing is that, you know, let's let due process take place. And I don't think we need to air out everything out in the media as it is either. So that's my comments. And hopefully when I see you guys up there, this will all be resolved and it'll be a lot better atmosphere to work and to do what you guys are elected to do for the ratepayers of the good citizens of Montana. So thank you for your time and allowing me to make my comment.
Thank you, Jeff, for weighing in this afternoon. Are there any other commenters online? Patricia, do you have anybody else that's popped in? Okay, no, none other are registered. So we'll begin the work session. If you'll move to tab 5 in your book, this is an out of cycle work session. And if you'll go to the agenda, it is basically commission initiated, requested to address Vice President Felder's letter to Governor Gianforte. So with that, I will, I guess, open it up to discussion.
Chairman Welborn?
Yes, Commissioner Bukasek.
May I ask a question of staff?
Yes,
So, Lucas Hamilton, if he's present, he was member of, he's chief legal and member of the response team. I have a question, 4 questions for him, if he's available.
yep, he's moved, he's just moved up, yes. Mr. Hamilton.
So question number 1 for you, Lucas Hamilton, could you please state the purpose of the response team?
Thank you, Chair Wellborn and Commissioner Bukacek. The purpose of the response team is to provide an ad hoc response to formal complaints of discrimination, harassment, retaliation, and violations of the Commission's stated code of conduct policy. So the response team satisfies a role and obligation that would otherwise be required of the agency under Montana administrative rules to investigate complaints and make recommendations about what sort of remedies should be enforced if there is cause found for a violation of one of those statutes or one of the Commission's policies.
Thank you, sir. Question number 2, could you comment on the appropriateness and necessity of keeping confidential any internal processes of counseling a PSC member regarding behavior as you would do on the response team?
Chair Wellborn and Commissioner Bukacek, the reason why by policy and by administrative rule the response team process is confidential is to ensure that, one, retaliation does not occur, right? Retaliation is an adverse employment action taken against someone for participation in a protected process. And filing a workplace complaint, a workplace conduct complaint, is a type of protected process. So we don't want to see retaliation against individuals. That retaliation can create liability for an agency, independent of the merits of an underlying complaint. So one is to guard against retaliation or the opportunities for retaliation. And number 2 is to provide some degree of protection for those individuals so that they feel, even if they're not retaliated against, that they will be able to make a complaint and have it be heard fairly by their employer. So the principle is that if those individuals had to subject themselves to public embarrassment or harassment or retaliation, they'd be less likely to come forward and make their complaints in the first place. They'd be less likely to participate in a protected process. And so the confidentiality, while we can't guarantee it, agency managers have an obligation under commission policy and administrative rule to take every step we can to protect the confidentiality of those individuals and preserve the process as an option for those who want to voice concerns about workplace conduct.
Okay, and you might have answered this, but that confidentiality is also to protect the person that is being whose behavior is being evaluated. I think you might have said that. Is that correct? It's to protect the person, the individual?
Commissioner Wellborn and Commissioner Bukacek, that's absolutely correct. So at the stage of an allegation, right, a complaint, there is no cause or no cause. Sorry, that's confusing. Let me say that again. In a workplace conduct investigation, the finding is not guilt or innocence or liability or anything like that. The question is there cause for disciplinary action or is there no cause for disciplinary action? So at the stage that a complaint is filed, there has been no investigation and no inquiry into whether or not there actually is cause for any sort of remedial action, any sort of disciplinary action. And so, yes, it's also very important to preserve the confidentiality of those proceedings so that the person who is accused is not subjected unnecessarily to public humiliation over the mere fact that they've been accused of something. Even after the process is complete, it's worth noting that disciplinary records are still confidential. They're kept separate and apart from the rest of a personnel file, specifically to protect the confidentiality of everyone involved in the process. So it doesn't need to be a public process. In fact, from a management perspective, we have an obligation to take every step we can to keep it confidential. But of course, individuals involved in the process are free to talk about whatever they would like, as long as certain circumstances are not present, which I would be happy to get into if you'd like me to. But at this point, what's salient here is that confidentiality exists to protect the accused, the accuser, all the witnesses involved in the process, and anyone otherwise involved in the complaint process, including members of the response team.
Excellent. Comprehensive and concise at the same time, and maybe goes without saying, but if you could just answer the same appropriateness and necessity of confidentiality would apply to external investigations. Everything you just said. Is that correct?
Chair Wellborn and Commissioner Bukacek, that's correct. An external investigator brought in to provide that review of the conduct and interview witnesses, talk to witnesses. All the same confidentiality provisions apply in that circumstance.
Okay, I think this is my last question. Does the response team, does that keeping confidentiality include keeping commissioners and staff out of the loop unless they're directly involved?
Chair Wellborn and Commissioner Bukacek, generally speaking, yes, right? So the obligation is to maintain confidentiality as much as you can, but there's no guarantee of confidentiality, right? So eventually, through the process of an investigation, you'll need to talk to the witnesses and you'll need to learn what they know about the alleged conduct. And in the process of concluding an investigation, there'll be a presentation up to a decision maker about what was found. So in a general sense, while confidentiality cannot be guaranteed, it needs to be maintained throughout the process in order to limit all the bad consequences that I just talked about the chilling effect that it has on people willing to make complaints and on the potential liability that comes out of retaliation if that happens.
But up until that point that a statement is made or a conclusion of an investigation, up until that point, if people aren't involved, there could be reasons why other commissioners didn't know about it. I mean, I'm not saying they didn't know about it, but I'm saying there are reasons why staff and commissioners might not know about an internal or external investigation. Is that correct?
Chair Wellborn, Commissioner Bukacek, Yes, that is a correct statement.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Fielder, Vice President Fielder.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I had the unpleasant duty to write the letter to the governor requesting the temporary administrative leave suspension of President Molnar. And I'd like to, before we get into the discussion and the details about that, I'd like to get into or lay some foundation for commission and for perhaps the staff and the public to understand how we got to this point and why we're at this point, and then I will talk about the point that we were at, if that's all right, Mr. Chairman. So I'm going to go back a little bit to an audit that was performed on this agency in 2020. My first year on the commission, the audit report was released, and I found myself in a position of having to answer for some conduct issues of commissioners and staff that had occurred before I got here. And those conduct issues are somewhat documented were documented in the media, and also subject of a couple of different lawsuits that cost ratepayers hundreds of thousands of dollars in order to settle with people that brought claims against this agency that stemmed from misconduct from commissioners and members of staff. So this audit report in 2020, and the auditors are careful not to go into too much detail, but they gave us some strong recommendations. Number one was the auditor expressed concerns over the integrity and competence of the leadership of this agency. And those concerns stemmed from false information that was presented by members of management to the auditor and disregard of state and internal policies. Recommendation number one from that audit report, and there were 5 recommendations to the agency, but at the top of the list was that leadership should comply with all internal policies and implement a comprehensive plan to improve the department culture, which was badly suffering at that time. So that was audit recommendation number one, stemming from a review of activity at this agency in 2019 and 2020, and then reported to the legislature in June of 2021. The primary finding that's relevant here is organization, has to do, it's chapter 2, and it's called Organizational Challenges. The Department of Public Service Regulation can benefit from effective leadership and a healthy culture. The auditor noted that they found several situations indicative of an unhealthy organizational culture and ineffective leadership, including a certain commissioner who was then president of the commission overriding department controls, essentially ignoring the policies of the agency. The audit goes on to describe how important management's attitudes and actions are and how they set the tone for the organization. But the big takeaway here from this audit was that we needed to ensure that our leadership was following the policies, complying with all the internal policies, and we needed to develop a comprehensive plan to improve the department culture. So with that admonishment and recommendation from the state auditors, the Legislative Audit Division, the commission started work on a strategic plan. And the strategic plan was adopted by the commission the following year. It was August 30th of 2022 when the commission unanimously adopted a strategic plan, and specific to the audit, some goals and objectives were included in this plan. Now, the plan covered a lot of areas for the commission, but specific to the audit, goal number 1 in the strategic plan, which, by the way, this present commission just renewed and just changed the date on it so to extend it through this year. But this current commission also voted 5-0 in favor of this strategic plan as well. Goal number 1, improve organizational structure, including define leadership roles and responsibilities, establish a chain of command, revise the organizational rule, and establish leadership training and standards. Goal number 2 was to fully cover the audit compliance responsibilities and to tighten our policies and procedures. And goal number 3 was to improve internal policies and controls, including revising the department's internal operations and policy manual, which at that time was called the Blue Book and is now known as the Internal Policy Manual, or IPM. So that was step 2 after that really terrible audit that we received. And by the way, that audit in 2020 was a disclaimer. The audit disclaimed, which is about the worst kind of audit that you can get, because they said they couldn't trust anything that the agency had provided to them. So following our strategic plan, there was another audit performed on the agency, and this one came out in 2023, and it was a pretty good audit. We did good. The agency started to turn around. The strategic plan was implemented. Commissioners were behaving better. We were on the right track. This audit revealed no new recommendations to the agency, but it did refocus on prior recommendations that were not fully implemented yet. And the prior recommendation was to implement procedures to better ensure compliance with laws and policies. Two pieces of progress that the agency made that were noted was the agency created an executive director position and a business manager position to help us specifically with these important tasks. So the auditor identified that the department management implemented procedures to better ensure compliance with laws and policies, which we did. And they said, while these are positive developments, more time needs to pass to see whether these changes will improve department culture. So that was a continuing recommendation from 2023. At that time, the auditor also announced that these were the financial compliance audits, by the way. They also announced that they were starting a performance audit on this agency, and this was at the request of the Legislative Audit Committee. And the performance audit looked at a broader view of department operations than the financial compliance audit did. But recommendation number 1, well, let's see, note number 1 here in the performance audit, which came out January of 2024, so about a year and a half ago, this report was published to the legislature. And the audit noted the commission and department developed a strategic plan to improve department operations, performance, culture, and the reputation of the commission and the department. So they recognized that we were making strides. Number 2, the audit noted that staff were still somewhat concerned about the effectiveness of the new structure. And particularly, the audit noted that staff were concerned about management's ability to address inappropriate behavior in the department. Number 3 here, the audit noted that the organization, structure, responsibilities, and delegation of duties are necessary for establishing an effective internal control system. We have different people with different duties that are responsible for different areas of operation. And the response team is one of those areas that the agency established to handle the complaints. Recommendation number 1 from this audit, released January 2024, was expand and further define the commission code of conduct and to establish periodic continuing education for commissioners and staff on the code to ensure the standards and expectations are understood and followed. So the audit had been chastening the agency to get after get control of its conduct, get control of its internal controls, follow its policies. I would note that when we took an oath as elected officials, Article 3, Section 3 of the Montana Constitution says that I do solemnly swear that I will support, protect, and defend the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of Montana, and that I will discharge the duties of my office with fidelity. So in following up on those audit recommendations, we did offer training on those duties. What are the duties besides regulating the assigned companies that the legislature has assigned to us? There are other duties of elected commissioner. And the commission held a number of trainings, but I pulled up this one. I think you all attended this one, all the commissioners attended this one, and it was called the Duties of the Agency Head. This was conducted by our chief legal counsel. I believe it was in February of this year. And in that training, The slides that were presented to us note that Montana Code Annotated, which is the laws of the state of Montana, established the commission as the department head with certain responsibilities within the agency. And those responsibilities include establishing the policy to be followed by the department and the employees. That duty also includes, as the department head, the commission acting as a body must establish the policy to be followed by the entire department, not just the employees, but everybody here. So this training was important. It was in follow-up to the audit recommendations. So there's some foundation on why we got to the point where we established a code of conduct policy. This didn't come out of the blue. It didn't come as somebody's sudden idea that, hey, we ought to do this. There'd been a lot of legwork done, and the strategic plan and the audit reports and outside human resource professionals had all assisted the commission as well as our legislative oversight agencies in moving us in a better direction. And the commission's been going in a good direction. We really have. So I want to talk about the code of conduct policy a little bit. And this was established, as Mr. Hamilton covered. I won't repeat everything he said. But the code of conduct policy that the commission adopted after multiple public meetings and basically about 2 years of work on our policies, established that this department will follow the state of Montana's equal employment opportunity, non-discrimination, and harassment prevention policy. And the code of conduct policy requires that supervisors who observe behavior that could be viewed as discrimination or harassment shall stop the behavior and notify the human resources officer or another member of the response team as soon as possible. The code of conduct also states that supervisors shall not retaliate or allow, condone, or encourage others to retaliate against any current or former employee or job applicant for opposing unlawful discriminatory practices, filing a discrimination complaint, or participating in a discrimination proceeding. The reporting that's required under the state law is that regardless of the perception of the validity of a complaint, it has to be taken seriously. The agency has to take it seriously, has to look into it, can't just be dismissive about it, and has to determine whether there's validity to the complaint before just out of hand dismissing it. So the agency, the commission, set up this response team process to deal with this so that the response team has the responsibility to receive complaints, to investigate complaints, and to respond to reports of harassment, discrimination, retaliation, or formally reported violations of the policy. The response team, also, the code of conduct policy addresses that when it comes to investigations, if there's a complaint made against any member of the response team, that individual is excluded from the meetings of the response team and the administration of the investigative process. In this case, it has been made clear by President Molnar himself that there were complaints filed against him. He was not able to participate because the complaints were against him and it would have been a conflict of interest. According to our administration policy, when the president's not available to perform his duties, the vice president assumes those presidential duties, which is why I was placed on the response team when the complaints came in about President Molnar. So that's our code of conduct policy. I would add, just to flesh this out a little bit, that our administration policy describes the role and responsibility of committee chairs. Okay. So the chair of a committee or an ad hoc committee is authorized to reasonably direct staff, manage committee members and committee work, and utilize department resources to carry out the duties of that chairmanship. Chairs are responsible for managing their assigned matters and shall keep commission leadership and the appropriate division administrator reasonably apprised. In this case, since we had a complaint against our commission president, I was not able to speak with him about the complaint directly. It had that I couldn't speak with anybody, any witnesses or any complainants or anybody, because the response team had determined that independent review would be prudent and should be done. So I kept the appropriate division administrator reasonably apprised, and myself as the member of commission leadership, I was actively involved in it. The administration policy is also clear that although the commission is the head of the department, the lawfully enacted policies of the commission govern department operations. The commission can change its policies, but there's a process for that. So unless and until the code of conduct policy is changed, the response team is required to follow it, and so is this agency. And that is what we have been trying to do. Now, to go to the complaints, I should say. I can't go into the details, and I won't go into the details of all of them. I don't have all the details in front of me right now because the response team has not been able to complete its review of the complaints or develop its recommendations. But I will say that going back to February of 2025, there were incidents involving President Molnar's conduct, which were troubling and reportable and fell within those generally described categories of sexual harassment, discrimination, those types of things, a hostile work environment and things like that. So I worked with President Molnar individually and spoke with him about some of these things. We sat down and had a talk, and I told him I was having a discussion with him as part of our code of conduct policy, which states that polite conversation may be the best way to address something. Maybe they don't even know. Maybe the person doing this doesn't even realize that it's conduct that is unacceptable. And so I had that polite conversation with President Molnar. I had more than one polite conversation with him about the things that he says that cross the line. I tried to work with him and other people that had concerns to see if we could get this resolved informally and not have it go to a formal process. And I think we made some progress. I think Commissioner Molnar was responsive to some of those suggestions initially, but then he wasn't. And we finally found ourselves in a situation where a little bit more formal counseling was warranted and was conducted. The chief legal counsel and I sat down with President Molnar specifically and went over the Equal Employment Opportunity Act laws regarding discrimination and sexual harassment in the workplace. There's two standards here which are fairly serious. And I'm not at a point where I can say definitively that Commissioner Molnar should be disciplined. That's not the purpose of the response team's recommendation to the governor. It doesn't have to do with discipline. It has to do with the ability of the response team to actually do its required due diligence on the complaints and reach a recommendation point. Sexual harassment, any kind of harassment, including sexual harassment, consists of, but is not limited to, oral, written, or electronic communications in the form of repeated and unwelcome jokes, slurs, comments, visual images, or innuendos based on a protected class. It is prohibited in the workplace. That is Montana Administrative Rule 2.21.4013 on harassment. I have extra copies if any of you would like that. We can't just dismiss that kind of behavior. It has to be addressed and it has to be corrected. Retaliation is a second standard that's a pretty high standard, and that is that Agency managers may not retaliate or allow, condone, or encourage others to retaliate against any customer, applicant, or current or former employee for opposing unlawful discriminatory practices, filing a discrimination complaint, or participating in a discrimination proceeding, including testifying in court. Agency managers who become aware of retaliation shall inform the agency's human resource manager, human resource staff, EEO officer, or ADA coordinator. The human resource manager, human resource staff, EEO officer, or ADA coordinator shall advise management on the appropriate course of action. When retaliation was confirmed and substantiated by the investigation, the response team had to act. It had to act quickly to try to stop the retaliation. I will go back to an email sent to President Molnar on Thursday, June 19th from our chief legal counsel, who first gave notice to him that an independent review is being conducted related to concerns that President Molnar's conduct has violated the commission's code of conduct. During this process, the department makes every attempt to protect the privacy of individuals involved. However, individual privacy cannot be guaranteed. Individuals who make a complaint or participate in the process are protected from retaliation. There's citations to the administrative rules as well as the policy. There's an explanation here from our chief legal counsel to President Molnar at this time when he was notified that an independent review regarding his conduct was commencing. And it was a warning, and it said retaliation occurs when an employer, through a manager, supervisor, administrator, or directly, takes any type of adverse action against an employee for engaging in protected activity. An adverse action is an action which would dissuade a reasonable person from raising a concern about a possible violation or engaging in other related protected activity. Retaliation can have a negative impact on overall employee morale. President Molnar was notified that individual from Communications and Management Service had been retained to conduct an independent review of the complaints and would be contacting him to schedule a time for an interview. That was warning number one. I bring that up because I think yesterday President Molnar said he didn't get any written warnings, that my letter was to the governor was full of lies, that he didn't receive any warnings. There was no informal counseling. There was months of it. Warning number two came on August 1st, and I wrote this letter to President Molnar. And it was as when I was working with the response team and receiving, we were witnessing and watching and receiving more reports of retaliation. And so I wrote a letter to President Molnar to remind him that retaliation of complaints relating to his professional conduct was prohibited by the department's internal policy as well as state and federal law. And I summarized basically what our chief legal counsel had told him back in June. And I indicated that some of his comments over the last few days, including those to the press, appear to be retaliatory in nature and therefore create the risk of liability for the Public Service Commission. Speaking to the press isn't unlawful, but if the intent is to speak to the press to intimidate or denigrate or take out persons who are involved in the protected process, that is a problem. That is retaliation under the law, and that cannot be allowed to continue. So, over the course of the summer, the response team has been engaged in this process that's prescribed by the PSC Internal Policy Manual's Code of Conduct to investigate complaints involving Commissioner Molnar's workplace conduct. But during the investigation, Commissioner Molnar has repeatedly taken steps to interfere with the Code of Conduct process in an effort to prevent it from reaching its conclusion. The response team's complaint to the governor is a recommendation that he be temporarily suspended so that the process can be completed without interference. This is a temporary request for suspension. It's not a permanent request. It's just simply because President Molnar has not refrained from interfering in the process, and he has not refrained from retaliating against those involved. And so when the response team on August 15th received substantiated confirmation from independent review that retaliation was substantiated by evidence. We felt that we had no other choice but to quickly request that President Molnar be placed on administrative leave. If it was any other manager in the agency, management could have put the person on administrative leave. We've done that in the past when there's been managers in high-level positions that were exercising conduct that was a direct violation of state and federal law and violation of the policies. So, and in this instance, the response team couldn't bring its findings to the commission because we were still in the process of trying to investigate. We were still in the fact-finding process. So we couldn't come to the commission and say, hey, President Molnar has done these things and we think he ought to be disciplined. We never got to that point because President Molnar has constantly interfered in the process. We've had to deal with a number of things. And President Molnar's position, as we discussed this morning, we had a very amiable discussion this morning, and I appreciate that, is evidenced. And I presented some of that evidence in my letter to the governor on what he has done that has been interfering with the process. And first and foremost, that he's excluded from the administrative process by the policy because he's the respondent. But he's still been exercising his authority as commission president to try to access the records, to require information that's not available to anybody but the response team at this point. He's claimed he's not subject to the policies of the agencies. He's done another number of things. I won't rehash them all. My letter to the governor explains several of those things. But Commissioner Molnar still believes there's no evidence that he's interfered. But a couple of things, the work session request that was requested on August 11th. Commissioner Molnar, you asked for this work session request to be prepared for you, correct? Okay. So the purpose, to negate contracts with Amy Christensen, attorney, and CMS. That's the attorney that the response team had contracted to give us counsel on this process. And CMS is the HR management firm that was conducting the investigation. So President Molnar used his presidential powers to put in a work session request for the purpose of negating contracts with Amy Christensen and CMS. Furthermore, his request asked that the chief legal, the executive director, and the human resources officer for the agency not be allowed to give counsel to the commission on this matter. So again, saying the commission should take this up, the commission should negate the contracts, the commission should not get any help from its professional staff on this. So that's one piece of clear evidence that he's trying to stop the investigation from going forward. There's others. He has threatened to not pay or approve the payment for the independent investigator or the legal counsel that was contracted by the agency to assist with this process. And by the way, that contracting those outside services is provided for in the Code of Conduct policy, that the response team can do that if it feels it's necessary to get outside help. And in this case, the response team felt that it was necessary. There wasn't anybody in-house that wanted to investigate the president. There was a desire of the response team to make sure there wasn't any bias in this, so to go to independent review and seek professional HR people and a professional HR attorney to give counsel on this. And so that is what the response team did. It exercised its authority to do that, and it did that because it found that that was necessary. Yesterday, a claim log appeared on my desk from our fiscal staff and with a note that said, "Hello, Vice President, would you be willing to approve these payments from July, including for CMS, the HR firm that the response team had contracted?" Normally, the president would sign this. This is dated July 14th, but the president didn't sign it. He wrote, I believe he wrote, that's your handwriting, denied across. Okay, denied. Right. Okay, so President Molnar, he told us through his counsel that he would not approve any outside services for the response team to do this process. So He tried to negate their contracts, and now he's trying to deny payment for the services rendered. Those are just a couple things that demonstrate interference. So this is why, this is part of why the response team arrived at the conclusion that we can't do the work that we're supposed to do. We can't complete this process because President Molnar keeps injecting himself into it in various ways, and we're having to constantly respond to that. So the request for administrative leave to the governor was made. It was filed August 20th. The decision to request it was August 15th, which was a Friday. It took a few days to put it together. And so that request now stands before the governor, and the factors that went into that were, we saw active retaliation and had substantiated evidence of it, which must be stopped. We had interference in the response team's obligation to complete the complaint process according to our policies and state laws. And we also have the requirement to keep the proceedings confidential and can't give out, publicize the names of those who complained, or those who were witnesses, or those involved in the process. We're bound by state law to keep that information confidential. So those were three things we aren't able to do. President Molnar doesn't want us to do those things. He's trying to use his authority and his position to stop us from doing those things. And we got to the point where we all agreed that there was no other way but to have President Molnar put on a temporary administrative leave so we can actually do the work. And I talked with President Molnar this morning and suggested maybe he voluntarily go on administrative leave so we can complete this process, because I think it could be dealt with, and it didn't need to get this big. It didn't need to be a big blow up. It could have been dealt with simply by any rational person sitting down with the reviewer in the first place and just saying, okay, we've got some issues to deal with, let's deal with them. But that's not where we're at. And so I wanted to give you that background of why we are where we are today, and why the response team felt absolutely obligated to make the request, because nobody else can place the governor on, or excuse me, place President Molnar on administrative leave. If the commission wants to place him on administrative leave, it does require a 4-to-1 vote. We built in a safeguard into our policy, but that's for a disciplinary matter. This is not a disciplinary matter. This is an administrative matter. The response team is attempting to complete its obligations under the policy. There's a big obstacle in our ability to do that. That obstacle is President Molnar. And so we are trying to remove that obstacle for a temporary time period so that we can complete our work. And after that time, then perhaps the response team will come forward to the commission and make a recommendation regarding disciplinary measures, if any are warranted. We're not at that point yet. We don't know that. We would like to get to that point without further interference and further retaliation against any persons that are involved in this. Mr. Chairman, thank you.
Thank you, President Molnar.
Must admit, I wasn't expecting all of this, but I will make some comments back before I make the motion. The comment of transparency and due process is the process by which the response team will act. So far as confidentiality, which came up quite a bit, Inspector Clouseau for a moment here. Management may not prohibit department personnel from discussing a complaint or ongoing investigation with coworkers. How private is that? Unless management conducts an individualized assessment and demonstrates one of the following facts. There are witnesses in need of protection. I'm not aware of any witnesses. Certainly not, therefore they don't need protection from me. Evidence is in danger of being destroyed. I'm not aware of any evidence. I have no idea how I would destroy it if it existed. Testimony is in danger of being fabricated. When testimony comes in from an anonymous source, That's where the danger of fabrication exists. But I go along with that, and there is a need to prevent a cover-up. Let it be remembered by the press and all that are here, I waived all rights to privacy under Article 2, Section 10 of the Montana Constitution. I am the one that brought this fiasco to the public eye. I am the one that went to the press. Retaliation, according to Commissioner Fielder, is that I held a press conference and discussed the lack of due process that was guaranteed to me if I had an interview. I said, I did not say I would not interview. I said I wanted my attorney present. And they said he may be present, but he may not speak. I said if I was accused of a triple murder and I was in the investigatory process at the police department, and my attorney showed up and said, don't say anything. If you're not going to book him, we're out of here. You don't tell an attorney he can't speak and say that you have received, in fact, competent representation, which is guaranteed. I was told that I asked exactly what is it I'm accused of. And they said, we can't tell you that. I did ask, I said, I believe I have the right to know the name of my accuser. And they said, you don't know it now, you may never know it. I said, then how do I defend anything they say? If I don't know what is said, if I don't know what I'm accused of. I said, I want it recorded. We'll do it in the commissioner's room. We'll have it visually, audio, and we will have video recording. And they said, we'll discuss that after you agree to an interview. From what you've heard here today, is there any reason I would assume that somebody hired to investigate me would not misquote me, change a quote, or leave something out? My only protection is through recording. And all of these requests came from my attorney. They are a matter of email and the response. They said, you do not have due process until after the investigation. My attorney said due process attaches at the beginning of the investigation. I say I'm guaranteed constitutional due process because I was born in America, wherever I am, and whatever is happening to me, no matter who's bringing it. That is a matter of record. Months ago, we had a question on, I asked Alana to start the process, letting everybody know that we're going to go into a review of the internal policy manual. If any employee had any suggestions, they should take it to their manager. The manager would make sure that it was not a matter of state law, that we're just quoting the law, and pass it up. And if they did not pass it up to the commission, they could bring it individually. That process stopped in the middle from talking to the department heads that she worked with, and we went to, you will sign the internal policy manual, and you will agree to comply. The tape is clear. I said I cannot sign a document that does not guarantee due process to every employee here. Since then, you can go to Tina Limazin's office. She asked me to sign it. And what I wrote down was, I will sign when due process is guaranteed. The first time, I didn't even know this was coming on. It was so obvious that this was an authoritarian move. You will do as you are told. You will agree to all interpretations that come after you sign it. You will agree to all interpretations from now on. I said, Alana Lake cannot be the final arbiter. It has to be the commission, and we have to tell, this is all on tape. We also have to inform them that they are entitled to administrative review, and they're entitled to go to court. All of this, and most of what was discussed, is I am standing for constitutional integrity, and I am standing for due process for everybody in the commission, whether they are the head of the commission or they were hired yesterday to take complaints and they're still in training. So let's take, a look at sexual harassment. First time I've heard that. I will admit that months ago, the response team called me in and said, we've received a complaint. I said, what's the complaint? And they said, you told a joke that had sexual innuendo. I said, no, I didn't. Alana said, yes, you did. I heard it. Tell me the joke. Okay, yeah, I said that. Where's the sexual innuendo? They explained to me 3 times. I said, okay, I can see where somebody can get there. Some are more sensitive than others. I'll watch it. And they said, fine. Lucas Hamilton then said, and you've got another one. I said, what's that? He said, well, I'm warning you. What's the warning? He said, you refer to yourself as El Presidente de la Grande Mucho Macho Man Molnar. I said, what's wrong with that? He said, women can get the impression that you think only macho men can be president. No, I think the term president is silly for what I do. I chair the commission. I'm the director of a department. Call me director, call me commissioner, call me chairman. Those would be accurate. President isn't even accurate. I think it's funny. I made a joke out of it. That doesn't mean the governor can overturn an election. It doesn't. And if he appoints somebody in my stead, we have a problem. The bill that she referred to, I did write denied. That was 2 days ago. Turns out it's already been paid. I didn't know that when I wrote that. It's a bill for $1,500 from CMS. And they say what they did during the $1,500 was make some phone calls and watch a video. In 90 days, they have not offered a single fact to my knowledge that is provable. Let's take so yeah, I told a joke, maybe a little colorless. 5 people laughed, 1 didn't. I'm guilty. We all face that. I didn't know people still thought that way since 10 years ago. And to call myself Mucho Macho Man Molnar, and I even explained, I got it from Randy Savage from wrestling. It's funny. It's not discriminatory against women. So, yes, I did request that the Public Service Commission take a look at those contracts and nullify them. By law, by our own manual. I read it again this morning. Which one read it? I was reviewing some of this stuff. All contracts must be okayed by the commission. To redo this room, to remodel, I had to sign off. If Commissioner Pinocci wants to go to a NARUC meeting, I have to sign off and then I have to make sure that he went and sign off again. I've been called on the carpet for not documenting a sack of paper clips. So I said I bought them to clip paper, and they said, okay. These contracts entered into by staff secretly in the dark are not binding because the commission did not rule. If Commissioner Fielder had wanted to have a closed meeting on those contracts, go to commissioners individually and get signatures, that would have been fine. I'm saying they're no good until the commission acts. So I asked for an act. I asked for a commission hearing on the contracts. That's what I'm supposed to do. Did I ask staff not to comment? By our own internal policy manual, which you wrote, I can ask that staff not offer a recommendation, but staff may still offer a summary of the issues. That's what this says. I was enforcing the manual. Your dereliction of that is not my fault. 3 commissioners said, we will not look at a contract. What other contracts then can 3 staff issue and bind? I'm supposed to okay every expenditure. I did not okay that expenditure because I don't have a contract to back it up. So, which kind of takes us a little bit to the audit she was talking about. At the exit audit, I asked the 2 auditors, I said, I've been here a long time in the commission. Been through a lot of audits. They always go around and ask, do you feel you're being discriminated against? Are you being bullied? Do you think that you have a path forward for growth? All kinds of questions. I said, did you ask those questions when you were doing the audit? They said, yes. I said, did anybody say that they were being harassed, that they were being intimidated, that there was retaliation? And they said, no, not one. Suddenly they're coming out of the walls. Which one is independent? The one with nothing to gain, or the ones that are attacking the president of the commission? Is staff intimidated by me? I'm looking at 3 of them that aren't. I don't know of any that are. I don't know a single one that is. When Commissioner Fielder wrote me, yeah, I've received several warnings on retaliation. Lucas said, don't retaliate. I'm not retaliating. The head of CMS said, we'll send you the laws on retaliation. I said, don't bother. He said, why not? I'm not the kind of guy that retaliates. I haven't got time for it. So now it turns out, and Commissioner put this in her letter or email to me, that your press conference is retaliation. You better watch it. You're going to get in trouble. I wrote back and I said, I don't know if it's in hers or if I have to get it for the press. But I said, I've been here 7 months. I've gone to battle on some pretty serious things that mean a lot to a lot of people. I said staff should not be able to meet secretly in unannounced meetings with utility staff on issues that are currently before the commission or on any other issue. It should be open. I lost that 3-2. So do you think I feel strongly about the public's right to know, to attend a meeting, to see government action before a final action? These are all constitutional rights. I do. So then how do we get to that if I hold a press conference to announce that I will not take part in an investigation because I am not guaranteed due process? How is that wrong? I've been very clear, and I shall remain being clear. I will protect the constitutional rights of every member of this commission and the people that come before us, even if they don't like what I'm doing. I will guarantee their right to speak. I will guarantee due process. If you want an attorney, you can have one. If he wants to object to a question, he can object. Why does that vilify me? In fact, there is a statute that I found. I've been digging through this stuff for a long time. Not only is there a statute that says that contracts have to be okayed by the commission, which could have been done very secretly. Go to each one and get their signature. There's also one that says that an inside policy or rule does not trump a rule passed by MAPPA, because we're under MAPPA. A rule passed by MAPPA must accentuate in a positive way the law that required it. It cannot overturn the law. The law cannot go against a judicial ruling, and a judicial ruling cannot go against the Constitution. I'm talking constitutional rights. She's talking policy. Nobody has their election overturned over policy, and I'll get into that in a minute. So, I'm sorry, I had eye surgery last week, and I'm having a little trouble here. But they can't go forward with the investigation if I'm here. My attorney will keep me informed as to what's going on. I still have a right to go to the press. That's not intimidation. If you're intimidated because I said I want my rights, you don't belong here. Every commissioner took an oath to uphold the Constitution. That includes my rights to speak. That includes her right to speak as she just did. That does not include anybody's right to say I cannot talk to the press or point out that we're in a cauldron of crap. So, let's,
Mr. Chairman?
a cauldron of anything. response team meeting. I've been to several. I was at the one I talked about where somebody said I told a bad joke, and Lucas took offense at the fact I called myself Mucho Macho Man Molnar. Everybody laughed at him. Other commissioners have been brought forward. I have guaranteed their right to privacy and their right to know what's going on. Here's what we're doing. Here's who made the complaint. And nobody has objected to that, because at the end of it, we always go through the 4 criterion, and the 4 criterion were never breached. There is no right to confidentiality other than under those 4. Other than Article 2, Section 10 says that it requires a state, the need of a state has to be granted in order to breach that confidentiality. There is no need for the state. And if there is, I breached it. I'm the one that wants the sunshine. I'm the one that wants transparency. Not those that say, we're so afraid of him, we would like to get in front of the microphone. They're not afraid of me. I asked Commissioner Fielder in that email. And he said, I have fought on everything out here. The right for public participation, you name it. Every week, every month I've got something big going on. In 7 months, can you name one time I have retaliated against anyone? One time. No answer. Suddenly, she's got a book full of them. But we don't know who I retaliated against. And since I don't know who brought the complaint, I was told from the head of CMS that there were 3 complaints and several witnesses. A member of the press asked Alana, were there 3 complaints? She said yes. Was Molnar made aware of these? No, he was not. How can I retaliate against something I don't know what's going on? I didn't know there was an investigation into retaliation until I read the letter. How can I retaliate against an action I don't know what's going on? It's trumped up. It is designed for the governor to put me on suspension, possibly without pay. Everybody knows I just bought a house. I can be here every day and be a good president. I can't afford that house. It can bankrupt me. Even when it's done, she says the governor should not allow me to be president until I sign the internal policy manual. If I say it's a violation of due process, I have to give up my oath of office, get my job back so I don't lose my home. You want to talk retaliation? Hold a press conference and tell somebody they're going to get you fired. You know how long that lasts? You would not get a lawyer to carry it. I'm entitled to these things. So,
Mr. Chairman, I have some concise, brief comments. May I make them, please? At this point, I have asked staff a question, but I have not entered into the discussion. Otherwise, I can make my comments after President Molnar is done. This meeting's been going on for almost an hour and a half. So I just want to make sure you know I do have some concise prepared statements I'd like to
Duly
make.
noted. I'm hoping he'll wrap up his preliminary stuff, but as soon as he's done, before he makes a motion, if he makes a motion, I will give you a chance to put your comments into the record,
Thank you,
Commissioner.
Mr. Chairman. Thank you, sir.
it was said that a professional HR attorney was hired. Sounds pretty good. Sounds like somebody I would hire. However, I'm entitled to a fair and unbiased proceeding. The attorney hired, Amy Christensen, is a member of the Diversity Legal Foundation. I am a rock solid conservative. I'm pretty sure we don't agree on much. For 20 years, all of her donations have been to Democrats and to pro-abortion judges. I believe a baby is entitled to its first breath and its last breath without state interference. I'm not even a death penalty guy. State should never interfere. God will make that decision. Do you think there's anything I can say that she will find politically correct? I'm told that it's professional misconduct. Professional misconduct is what you say and do when you're at work. That is a politically correct decision. To find somebody who is a headhunter who wants my head and say they're going to direct the commission when professional misconduct is not even defined. And I said, how is it defined? And Lucas said, it's defined by common usage. I'm pretty sure that Amy Christensen's common usage is not the same as mine. How fair is this? I am denied every possible conceivable avenue of saying this is fair. If I thought it was fair, would I be sitting here? No. My oath of office is to protect constitutional rights and due process, not to follow the HR, our internal policy manual, no matter what road it takes. That's my job. So with that in mind, I'm not exactly sure how to even wrap it up. There was so much. But kind of in conclusion, how intimidated is staff if they're here testifying that they want an investigation that is not completed, a second investigation not completed, to go to the governor for dispensation? If he suspends me, the people that elected me to vote for them are denied a voice. That is overturning an election. Appointing someone in my stead is overturning an election. Over a joke? Over a joke that was never intended to have sexual innuendo? Are you kidding me? So if all they have for retaliation is that I said I'm not receiving due process, then that means they knew I was receiving no due process, had been stripped of it, and they didn't want to be uncovered. That's all it means. If they take that position, I can't help them. Sometimes it blows back on you. So with that in mind, I would like to point out that management shall document the rationale for requiring department personnel to refrain from discussing a complaint. I'm not aware of any documentation. They say that I've been trying to find things out. I asked Lucas who was on the response team. He says, I can't tell you. I said, you said in the press that my due process rights are protected. Now counting my right to remain silent upon death, and considering what all is being done to me to have an abortion paid for by the state, what due process rights do I have? He said, I can't discuss that. It was in the paper. I'm the spokesman for the commission. To ask where the accuracy lies is my obligation. It doesn't affect the investigation. It affects statements by a highly placed individual. So on the bottom of the letter, and I asked about this yesterday, I didn't get any answer. The chief legal counsel shall serve as the chair of the response team, and the HRO shall serve as secretary. The signature on Fielder's letter, Commissioner Fielder's letter, says that she is the chairman of the response team. She's my replacement as president. That's legal. She can't be the chairman because I asked him, are you still our chief legal or have you resigned while I was out for 12 days? He said, I'm still. Therefore, he's still the chief. The signature is wrong. What she's done is wrong. She says in there that I'm guilty of retaliation. You go down to the footnotes, and it says still under investigation. So I'm not guilty of anything. In order to be guilty, there has to be proof. In order for there to be proof, it may have to go to the county attorney. It doesn't go to a highly biased, self-enriching group. If they get to choose their president, if 3 staff members can start an investigation without any authority to sign a contract, who here is safe? No commissioner would dare go against staff. That's not our job. So, Mr. Chairman, I would like to make a motion. I ask that we recall Commissioner Fielder's letter dated
Mr.
August
Chairman,
to the governor.
Just hold it, please. Commissioner Bukasek. Commissioner Bukasek.
yes, my concise prepared statements are part of the general discussion that has already been going on.
Would you rather reserve that for now or in discussion after the motion is made?
Whatever you think is most proper.
Um, go ahead. If you want, I mean, I guess to keep it fair, go ahead. But what I do ask is we don't have to replow new ground after the motion is made then.
That
So,
sounds very reasonable.
okay,
So you want me to go ahead?
it's your prerogative.
Okay. I had chosen previously not to attend this meeting due to its impropriety. It's improper to have a public discussion about a confidential matter. It's an unethical, unconscionable process for a public official to be allowed to state his view of the case, including his view that could potentially include untrue or partially untrue statements, with the response team, based on state law, unable to express their side because they are rightfully keeping confidentiality. Brief side note, I had never heard the Macho Man statement by Commissioner Molnar until he brought it to the press. I cannot state any better than Patricia and Alana did about their personal experience of the superb quality of our staff, and that includes the members of the response team. I am highly protective of our staff and protective of the agency itself, and I also greatly appreciate the public comments made today. I am attending this meeting because untrue statements by Commissioner Molnar need to be addressed, and I am in a position to do that. Knowledge of Brad Molnar's untrue statements are important to promote this process. His attempts to thwart the investigation demonstrate his lack of recognition of others' First Amendment rights to report confidentially their concerns about his behavior. Furthermore, Commissioner Molnar claims to be a truth teller, concerned about transparency and corruption, concerned about due process, the constitutional right to due process, and freedom of speech. Those are righteous causes that I carry as well, but it does not comport with his untrue statements. There are two general categories of untrue statements made by Commissioner Molnar. I know for a fact these are untrue statements. There is some overlap with what others have said, but please bear with me. Category 1, I have two examples. To reiterate what has been said, PSC Chief of Staff Alana Lake stated today and after the July 29th, 25 press conference, the investigation of Brad Molnar has nothing to do with Northwestern Energy. The untruth of Commissioner Molnar's statement has been addressed and has no place in today's conversation, but Commissioner Molnar continues to state that untruth. The second example of category 1, Commissioner Molnar says there are no examples of retribution and retaliation on his part. A reasonable person could opine that holding a press conference about an investigation being made on themselves could potentially have the effect on witnesses that they will be less likely to come forth in an investigation. A reasonable person could consider that press conference an example of intimidation and otherwise tampering with witnesses in an investigation. Since Commissioner Molnar mentioned names in his press conference and continues to mention names, that can reasonably be interpreted as retaliation against people he thinks might have made complaints in the investigation. Category 2, and this is more brief. I waive confidentiality at this point in order to address Commissioner Molnar's statement that he has been denied due process and that the outside investigation was the first he had heard about concerns about his behavior. Vice President Fielder has already addressed this, as did Chief of Staff Alana Lake, but I want to give my personal experience. He says he had little or no consultation about his behavior prior to hearing about the investigation. Commissioner Molnar says the investigation started in June or July. I made complaints about his behavior several months before that, and it sounds like others made complaints even before my complaints were made. I made an email to Commissioner Molnar and some others. It was about statements that he had made about me in a scheduling meeting that were mischaracterization, misrepresentation, and blatantly untrue. The last paragraph of my email, and I quote, "Due to these misrepresentations, unless there is an email invitation to such a discussion, I decline informal meetings with you about issues that come before us in the business meetings," end of quote. I have not had a private conversation with Commissioner Molnar since then. That was in March. Nor will I unless there is a witness present. Since that email, I have heard him repeatedly mischaracterize and misrepresent other people and say untrue things about them. He is doing that. He did that yesterday and is doing it today toward Vice President Fielder. Vice President, I'm closing now. Vice President Fielder started counseling Commissioner Molnar in January on proper parliamentary procedure, hoping to optimize his abilities to succeed as president. I believe, she stated it, and I believe she has also kindly counseled him one-on-one about his behavior, probably repeatedly and privately. I say that because when I would express a concern to her about his behavior, she would always have some response along the lines, "Give him a chance." It would be along the lines of, "What would Jesus do?" Her words about him were always kind and optimistic that he would get better. These are facts I stand by. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Bukasek. All right, President Molnar.
I'd like to make the following motion that the letter dated August 20th from Commissioner Fielder to the governor be recalled.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
The motion has been moved and seconded that the Commissioner Vice President Fielder's letter to the governor be recalled. Discussion, please.
I'm going to respond a little bit to what Commissioner Bukacek said. It is true that many times when I was new, Commissioner Fielder came in and said, "You could do this better, you could do that better, you said this, you said that." And I said, "Oh, okay. However, fellow commissioner, here's the things you can do better." And she would say, "Oh, okay." These were not stern admonishments. They were conversations between coworkers on how to do our job better. When I started, we did not have an executive director because he quit and went over to a different department. By our book, the president takes over the job of the executive director. I went to Commissioner Fielder and said, "I'm new here. The issues are new to me. The people and their personalities are new to me. Can we be co-executive directors? If something comes up the executive director would do, you and I sit down, we work it out together." I don't consider that particularly retaliatory. I consider it good management. To say that we had these conversations and I told you and she told him. These were coworkers discussing better ways to do things. Period. That's how far askew this has gone. So the question is not send it to the governor, as one of the public people said and others. Send it to the governor. Don't stop the investigation. Sending it to the governor doesn't stop the investigation. It goes on. You want these guys to get paid? Get 3 signatures on the contract from commissioners, as is required. As is required. Then I sign them. If they don't get paid, because nobody will do that, take them to small claims court. Show me where the commission ordered this work done. Up to the judge. There's nothing deep and nefarious here. It's how every business works. Show me your contract. What does the contract say? Did you do that work? In all of July, they watched a video? They watched a video for $1,500? That must be a pretty darn good contract. Contract says from $8,500 to $10,000. Our manual says that a subdivision of the Department of Administration is where we should go, or others. The Department of Administration said, "We're busy. We don't have anybody doing that anymore. We don't want your complaint." I said, The law says they are to handle it, stand on it. Not, oh, well, we'll spend $10,000 of ratepayer money because Molnar told a joke somebody didn't like. Because Molnar, I mean, can you imagine if every time a political figure had a press conference, it's considered retaliation?
We're going past an hour and a half, sir.
I don't care if you don't want to, if you don't want to stay,
Okay.
shut it off.
Easy, easy. Just,
No matter how long this takes, it's a matter of overturning an election by 3 staff members. That's the question. Overturning an election. And it's handled, it was said a moment ago that this is an administrative matter, so they can do it. Show me the authority under under an administrative order that one commissioner can ask the governor to suspend an election temporarily or permanently. Depends how long I can last without a paycheck and a house payment to make. So, what does it say? The response team may make a recommendation to the commission, and the commission has authority to act on the recommendation at a properly noticed public meeting with respect to Commissioner Fielder. Where and when was the properly noticed public meeting? Goes on. A public censure of a commissioner or a complaint to the governor pursuant to MCA 69113, which is where he can do a suspension, is by an affirmative vote of at least 4 commissioners. Did the other 3 not sign your letter? It's an illegal act. For the governor to accept hearsay, there's not any proof in that letter. There's no proof yet from anything in the way of a investigation. The intimidation and retaliation mentioned in the footnotes is we're looking at it. And if you can find a judge anywhere that will say, if a public official holds a press conference, it's retaliation, I'll eat my hat. The Supreme Court is clear. Political speech is the most highly protected speech in the First Amendment. A discussion on constitutional rights and due process is not retaliation. It's how democracy functions. So, without a public hearing, public meeting, one of these, and without 4 signatures, the letter is invalid. If you want to send another one, get 4 votes in a public meeting. That's what this calls for. There is no second avenue for an administrative review that leads to suspension. The law is clear. Our policy is clear. If all this is about policy, why is this one ignored? Why is the requirement for a contract to be viewed by the commission? I ask for a review so that we can see if we want to support those contracts, and I'm vilified. I ask for my constitutional right to speak, I'm vilified. I ask that we follow our own internal policy manual and have a public meeting and 4 votes, and I'm vilified. I'm tired of being vilified.
further discussion? Vice President.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We've heard a lot of he said, she said without citations to law. We've heard a number of so-and-so told me this, so-and-so told me that from our president without any, he's asking for evidence. I've laid out evidence. The response team has an active investigation, which is consolidating evidence in this matter. The attempts to stop the investigation are problematic, and they haven't changed. The reasons that the response team needs to have this administrative leave haven't changed. The active retaliation is still happening. The attempts to stop the process, the response team process, which is required, are still continuing. The fact that there's absolutely no accountability here on, hey, maybe I messed up, maybe it was me. We're not seeing that. What we're seeing is, oh, you're the response team and you've got a complaint against me and you're investigating me. You're corrupt. Must be you're corrupt. When you accuse other people in the response team process or witnesses or complainants of being corrupt because they're involved in the process, that is actual retaliation. You are casting aspersions on their character because they are involved in this protected process. President Molnar doesn't understand that, doesn't want to understand it, in my opinion. And this is why, despite many, many efforts to work with him, we are at the point where we were at on August 15th, where the response team made the decision that there was no other alternative except to request administrative leave of this person so that this process could finish unfettered, and so that the retaliation in the agency, which is required to be stopped, could be stopped. Now, he may still practice retaliation on his own, but it won't be condoned by this agency. This agency is at risk as long as it allows any member of management to act in this way. We are at risk of litigation, and not just litigation, but losing claims that may be made against the agency because we didn't act responsibly. We are obligated to act responsibly. Nobody wanted to do this. I didn't want to do it. I've invested many hours in trying to help President Molnar be successful. I think a lot of folks here have and would like to see him be successful. But he's going to, at some point, have to accept responsibility for his actions and his conduct that's inappropriate. And it's not a matter of a joke. And it's not a matter of holding a press conference to declare your rights to due process. It goes way, way, way beyond that. And the fact that he's not recognizing that is problematic, and another example of why administrative leave is necessary at this point. So I would say the motion is not well taken because it's an obligation of this agency to act. And that was done by the response team, and that letter stands, and it will stand. And my signature stays on that letter. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Further discussion?
Only respond that talking to the press about the lack of due process is not held to be retaliation at any level by any judge. It has been upheld by the Supreme Court many times. When Donald Trump was in his trial in New York, every day afterwards, he walked out and held a press conference on the courthouse stairs. Nobody said he couldn't. The judge said, you can't mention my daughter, and he didn't. How is it he did that? First Amendment right.
Point of order, this is repetitive and irrelevant.
And I maintain that he had that right. I didn't much care for it. And I have my right. To say that at this point, that was why it was brought, but it goes far beyond that, to who? There was not a single name or fact mentioned in her letter. She's asking the governor to react to innuendo and to uncompleted investigations. You want to make sure the investigation goes forward fully funded? Have 3 votes for the contracts. Other than that, it is clear. This is clear. You need a public hearing and you need 4 votes. They don't have them. If they get those 4 votes in a public meeting, send it to the governor. Other than that, as we are all well aware, a commission or an agency or an entity can be held legally responsible for not following their own rules. We have one in the Republican Party right now where somebody said, took away my right to vote without changing the rules on voting. It's in court, and they're going to win. You must follow your own rules. It's not a matter of what your friends did or didn't do. It's not a matter of what your enemies did or did not do. It's a matter of what does the rule say. And the rule says a vote by 4 in a public forum. That hasn't happened. You want to send the governor a letter? Get your 4 votes in a public forum. There's no way around that. I don't want to spend $20,000 fighting to make this agency follow its own rules. I expect the agency to follow its own rules.
Mr. Chairman,
Commissioner,
I'll be brief.
well, Commissioner Pinochi had his hand on and then we'll get to you. Fair enough?
Okay, thank you, sir.
Yes.
I'd like to ask the chairman not to have anyone interrupt and be called upon in some kind of order. I appreciate everybody's comments and no one should be interrupted on. So I'd like to ask the chairman to please discontinue that sort of thing. Now,
Duly noted.
I would like to let everybody know that it's a difficult matter, but there are some important points that I'd like to make known. At no time did anyone come to me as a commissioner and explain there was any complaint to President Molnar. The reason that should be concerning is each agency in Montana should be responsible for their own disciplinary action before anything is voiced outside of the agency. I can't think of an agency that sent a letter without the approval of that agency to the governor. If it's happened, I just can't think of it. And I've been involved, I think, in politics for 30 some years. And I would like to suggest that the policy change and that we discuss this amongst ourselves and then we approve it going outside of the agency. Because here I am, an elected official of the largest district in this state, and no one has brought any complaint to me whatsoever. And let me tell you something else about retaliation and being wrongfully accused. A few years ago, I was told that I was responsible for calling the police on Roger Koopman and having law enforcement show up in this office, and they put that in the paper. I was also accused of calling political practices and trying to turn Roger Koopman over to the disciplinary action. When I explained that I did not do it, and you simply could call the police department and get the report, or political practices and find out who made the report, they threatened retaliation if I said that. An elected commissioner. And the press covered the story. You can look it all up. Pinochi gave the emails to the press. Pinochi called the police. Pinochi got a hold of political practices. And then later, when it was proven that it didn't happen, my own staff, my attorneys here, didn't do anything to try to help me. Now, that staff is not here today. I have new staff. But don't think that commissioners do not have their own problems and are blamed for things they didn't do. And when the facts come out, no one seems to care. So when we rewrote the policy, I wanted to be involved so these sort of things wouldn't happen to the next commissioner. Jeff Pattison is running to replace me, and he made public comment today. And I told him, this sort of thing is going to happen to you. What I was told by Bob Lake is you're an elected official, and it's just tough love. Well, let me tell you, I don't think it's acceptable to staff or commissioners or to anyone. Now, today, I listened to Commissioner Fielder say that she has seen improvement with the commission. One of the things I asked Vice President Commissioner Fielder to do was to explain that I did not have anything to do with calling the police or releasing the emails or calling political practices, all which is easily proven and after the case has been found that I did not do it. Now, the feeling I get is I'm improving. What I don't feel she did is explain that I didn't do it in the first place. Now, I do not want anything to happen to another commissioner that has happened to me. And I feel we should have sat down and talked about this internally before a letter went to the governor. especially what's happened to me. And I can't think of a time where the public ever came forward and testified and said, you know, Pinocci, they lied about you. Not once, not twice, not 3 times. I lost count. And nobody ever came and said, hey, we're sorry. Daniel Zolnikoff, who I served with in the legislature, asked for an email request and a records request from this department. And after 2 months, he calls me on the phone and he threatened us with a lawsuit. We didn't give him those emails and those records in a timely fashion. And I agreed. And he said, Pinocci, what are you going to do about it? I held a hearing in this office to say we have a duty to release those public records in a timely fashion. The press was writing stories how we were trying to hide, not giving out our public records. And I explained that that is transparency and we have a duty. We had a vote and it was 4-1. And I was the only one to vote to release those records in a timely fashion. Now I'm telling you, I don't want to see anyone in the situation I was in. And I think we should have had these meetings before that letter was sent. And it looks suspicious under the situation that the president was under a time of surgery when this letter was sent. Within 24 hours of a $4 billion deal of a merger with Northwestern Energy, it just smells bad. I would have suggested that we wait and let's talk this over and find out what the facts are. I don't know what this man has done. He's asked me, I can't tell him. How can he be retaliatory when I don't even know what the claim is? And I'd kind of like to know, because my district is asking me what's going on, and I have to explain to them that their commissioner hasn't been told anything. Imagine if every state agency in Montana was going through this. And I have to disagree with Vice President Fielder. If she thinks things have improved over where we were a few years ago, let me tell you something. We ain't much better today than we were then. And you're talking to a commissioner that can prove, and you know, was lied about again and again and again and again, and in the press again and again and again. And the press never said they were wrong, and nobody has ever told me they're sorry. And I've been retaliated, I've been lied about, and I should have the same courtesy and rights as staff or anyone else. And this is why I'm concerned that I don't want this to happen to President Molnar or anyone else. That is why I'm supporting President Molnar's motion. Thank you.
Commissioner Bukasek.
Yes, sir, I'll be brief. So, calling a point of order is an appropriate part of Robert's Rules of Order, and it can be about irrelevance, repetition, disparaging others, and so on. So, and so I just want to say briefly, many of President Molnar's most recent comments, the ones that he just made before Commissioner Pinocci about process, many of those were untrue. The previous information given by Lucas Hamilton in answering my questions, Vice President Molnar in her presentation, those go through proper process. So what President Molnar said in his last comments were not true. That's all for now.
Duly noted.
Thank you, sir.
Further discussion?
Hopefully this will be a closing statement. But frankly, I'm somewhat challenged that people are concerned this is going on for 90 minutes. This can destroy a person's life. Made my wife cry. Wouldn't go to church that said, you've caused me to lose face. Thank you. What Commissioner Pinocci has said brings up a new point as far as I'm concerned. He was entitled to due process and a press that would look into the allegations for publishing. That's not a constitutional right. That's just good business sense. My attorney have pointed out that under Title II something, commissioners are separate from employees in the way they're treated. I can take any employee and take them through this process, get an independent evaluation. But commissioners, county commissioners, public service commissioners, it isn't stated. They're all elected officials. As they did it to him, anybody, if they'll do it to me, they'll do it to you. And you. And when I'm on the response team, I make sure it doesn't happen to anybody. But the fact of the matter is that if it happens here, 3 staff members of the governor's staff can ask for an independent investigation and start to take him down. Why'd they pass that law? Just like Commission on Political Practices, when did the complaints come up? During the election. No matter, it might not be decided for 6 months, but the election's in 3 weeks. They can take you down with unsubstantiated allegations, anonymous tips, meetings in the dark, contracts not satisfied through process because they want to. They say that I will impede the investigation. There's no evidence I've impeded anything. I don't even know what I'm being investigated for. So I am asking everybody, get due process. The fact is in the internal policy manual, if it does not result in due process in the next step, has to be stopped. For some reason, I'm vilified. All I'm asking for is contracts okayed by the commission, due process in any interviews, and a public meeting in which 4 people vote. If that's too much to ask, have the governor reject it, start again. Because without it, we are in violation of our own rules. And a judge will find that way every time. Because there's no way to overlook a public censure of a commissioner or a complaint to the governor by an affirmative vote of at least 4 in public place. You can't get around that. You can't get around that. Staff isn't guaranteed that. I'm making sure they get due process as much as I can give them. Other commissioners are do that, and I'm just one of them. Tell the governor, send it back, get your 4 votes, do it right here, and I'm good.
Commissioner Fielder.
Okay, thank you. This will be my final remark to my closing, if you will. Thank you, Mr. Chairman and commissioners and staff and members of the public for your time today on this. I just remind the commission where we're at. We are, the response team has an obligation, and that obligation was established by the commission on a vote of the commission after multiple public meetings. The response team is attempting to complete its duty and is not able to do that duty currently because of the interference of President Molnar. So the request to the governor from the response team is not a request to discipline President Molnar. It is simply a request to place him on administrative leave because he can't refrain from interfering in this process on his own. If and when the response team makes a recommendation to the commission for discipline, then there's a couple of actions there that the commission might take, could consider, that would require a supermajority vote. We are not at that point. We are simply trying to complete the process so that we can gather the facts, maintain the required confidentiality, and stop retaliation against those that are involved, so we can complete this process as we're required to do, and potentially bring some recommendation to the commission or to President Molnar if action is found to be warranted. But we're not talking about the investigation here today. We're talking about completing the process that's established by the commission and required. So we're at a place where it's not up to the commission to exert discipline. We're not asking for that. The response team hasn't made a recommendation to the commission. We're not ready to do that. We're not able to do that. That's why I asked for this meeting to be delayed. Just putting the focus back on what we're talking about. We are in a administrative process and we are trying to complete that process, and we are not able to do it at this point because of, and repeated, President Molnar's interference in it and his activities surrounding it. Thank you.
Thank you. Further discussion? Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. In January, I approached President Molnar with concerns about the policy manual, and I wanted them to be addressed when the time was right. He was scheduling that meeting, and I told him that I had some concerns. One concern I have with this particular process is that President Molnar has been disallowed to take part because the investigation or the concerns of President Molnar are about him. Well, here's a concern. I believe he should have been replaced by another commissioner. The investigation was about him, all right. Then he step aside, but another commissioner must step in. That's just an outside look. But that didn't happen. Now, perhaps another commissioner would have been selected to step in to say, now, before we send a letter to the governor, maybe the process is going forward anyway. I don't have a good answer to that. I've asked, what has stopped in the process? I can't get an answer. What stopped in the process that required the letter to go out? The proceeding is still going forward, but I can't even get an answer to that. And remember, no one has brought a single complaint to my attention about our president. And I'm the longest serving commissioner here, all right, with the largest district. So I think it's a good question. We should have discussed this a little more before a letter went to the governor's desk. And I want you to know I had concerns about the policy, and it is true I voted for it with concerns. And it was a big policy change. And I don't doubt one bit that we were going to find some things that could be improved. And it would be expected after the policy's in existence for a while to make a few changes. And I wanted on the record that I brought that up in January, which the president here, I'm sure, will remember. And I brought it up to Commissioner Wellborn as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Before the question gets called, I guess I would like to drill down a little bit from my reasons for voting being probably the deciding vote to allow this to move forward to a out-of-cycle work session. I wasn't, and I'm still not comfortable to involve the governor and ask him to get involved in things here that I feel like we should be able to take care of ourselves. I do have, and I did discuss this briefly, but with all due respect with the vice president, I do have some concerns that she didn't at least approach President Molnar ahead of time, and not necessarily to ask approval or not, but to let him know that the letter may be coming. I want to drill down on the internal policy manual. Yeah, it's not perfect, and it probably does take some looking into, but it is the tool that we have before us, and it's the only we've got to operate within the confines. There's not a lot of other choice. I mean, it's defined, and until that changes, it's the process that's in place. I mean, I'm conflicted here. I see, I am a little bit, I guess what concerns me a little bit, President Molnar, as you yourself have admitted this afternoon, that you probably did some things you shouldn't have, but I've heard no apologies. And I mean, I'm thinking that when these were first brought to your attention, if you had addressed it then, we probably wouldn't find ourselves here. I mean, and that's disappointing, because this whole thing has become very, very disruptive of the whole agency. And I get the due process. I do, but I guess I'm going to take a wild guess here and say this vote today is going to be very, very close, razor thin, if you will. So I guess my question to you is, what certainty do we have if this letter is pulled back? What certainty do we have from you that you will step out of the way, let the process work? If there's nothing to find, then in my mind, there's nothing to be afraid of, and we can talk about due process later. But what certainty do I have, if I support your motion, that you're going to step out of the way and let the process work without getting the governor involved?
Commissioner, I have no idea what I can say that would grant you solace. In the one and only time the response team that somebody said you told a joke with sexual innuendo, and I said, that's not sexual innuendo. At the end of it, I said, whoever it was, tell them I apologize, and I'll try to do better. In every conversation with Commissioner Fielder where he told me where I was wrong, and I told her that she was wrong, we both agreed to try to do better. How can I get out of the way of an investigation? They can call on the phone and talk to anybody they want. I wouldn't recognize these people in the hallway. They can come talk to anybody they want. The legislative audit talked to everybody they wanted and didn't find any of this. So I will guarantee you that in matter of fact, in the matters of going to the press conference, my attorney said, here is where your due process is being violated. Would you have me say I will no longer raise questions along those lines? That's my job. If indeed the investigation is being stymied, it would show up in their billing. They watched the video. They haven't done anything. If they want to talk to people, write a report, give it to the commission, they can do that. There's no way for me to stop it. I don't know how I can tell you that I will stop getting in the way when I'm not in the way. I don't even know what I'm accused of. I don't know. Today, I think we know that the retribution is that I pointed out in the press conference due process is being denied, and there was no good response. That isn't it. So how can I assure you I will not stymie an investigation? I don't even know what they're doing, when they do it, how they do it, who they talk to. They have carte blanche. So I will do my best to not step in front of them if I found out who and where they are. Other than that, I'm acting on attorney recommendation. I am more than willing to sit down with the governor and explain my side of this. I'm willing to go to court to explain my side of this. But I cannot guarantee you that nobody will ever again say he got in the way, when nobody can say now how it is I got in the way. So I can guarantee you that as president, I have asked for information and been told you can't have it. I didn't press it. I didn't take him to court. I didn't say anything other than in one case I said, I'm not talking about the investigation. I'm talking about, you made a statement to the press. It's my job as spokesman to make sure it's accurate. That is not getting in the way of anything. So whatever you think, whenever you think I'm getting in the way of the investigation, ask me. Show me how I'm doing that. I am so open to working with the commission for an open, honest investigation. What I would like to see, to tell you the truth, is that whatever the proven allegations are so far, publish them. Take out people's names, whatever you got to do. Let me respond, put it on the PSC website. The investigation will go forward. If they want it from that point, we're still investigating these things, fine. I want people to know. And that means I can't get in the way of the investigation. I simply report. If you can tell me how I cannot get in the way, I'm more than willing to listen. You know that. We have sat and talked about some things that we disagree on and things we agree on. I am not a guy that says I'm the president, we're doing it my way. I've never done that. So I will continue to do my presidential duties, sign for the paper clips, and their investigation will go on as they see fit. And if you get 3 votes to ratify those contracts, I'll sign them.
President Fielder, would you, I have a question that I think you might be able to answer that I think is germane to this discussion. And if you can't, just speak up, and I will totally respect that. But my question to you is under, kind of your involvement on the response team and the look into this situation. Can you give me, like, in context of time, if everything is able to just kind of flow the way you would, in real time, under a normal course of business, what we might be looking at to get something like this maybe either wrapped up or to whatever phase would be considered next?
Thank you for the question, Mr. Chairman. This would have been done and solved and water under the bridge months ago if Commissioner Molnar had simply acted in a rational way as any other mature human being would act under the anticipated conduct, code of conduct policy and the response team process. But that's not happened. So if Commissioner Molnar were placed on administrative leave, if the governor decided to do that, and we were able to focus on the actual investigation and the complaints and work through whatever recommendations may result from that. If the response team was able to focus on that, I would say, we'd need probably 2-3 weeks. Next week, the commission's out at a business meeting, so that takes some of us out. But I think that the response team could probably come up with recommendations and get through all this within 30 days or so. And then it's up to the commission. If a recommendation comes to the commission, it'd be up to the commission how long the commission wants to field that issue. It could be a couple of weeks. It could be, a month. It really depends on the commission's schedule and the commission's willingness to look at this and act, or if the commission decides it needs to defer it, or if it even needs to go to the commission. I don't even know if it needs to come all the way to the commission. I mean, it just really could have been taken care of, I think, without all of this to do before. So if we were unfettered, if the response team was unfettered, I think this would have been done weeks and weeks ago.
Thank you. President Molnar, let me ask you this. Again, I'm trying to find ways here to something that might work for all involved. Commissioner Fielder brought up what I thought was an interesting conversation you had sometime earlier about placing yourself on administrative leave. I get it that that kind of thing can be a tough pill to swallow, but I also see value in that because if you did that, I think that would, the letter would take care of itself. The governor's office wouldn't be involved. This thing would speed up. Your innocence could be proven that much quicker, and the commission could get back to work doing what the people sent us here to do. Would you entertain that idea?
It's an interesting idea, but there's a couple things that you would have to consider on that. If I would have to place myself on administrative leave, Commissioner Fielder, because she wrote that letter with probably 20 things that are wrong with the internal policy manual, should place herself on leave. If I place myself on administrative leave, 200,000 people that voted in my election don't have a voice here. My voice on MVP Tranche 2 goes silent. That's extremely important. My voice on the rate case that's going forward is silenced. Don't tell me it's not about this stuff. That's what happens under this. So my recommendation to you, and you're probably one of the more Solomon-esque guys splitting the baby I've ever met in my life. The policy manual is clear. 4 votes in public. Get them. So, I mean, I'm under a microscope now. Would I purposefully do something to impede an investigation? I don't think I've done it yet. There's been no evidence that I have. Would I go out of my way? I would not. Everything I've done has been at the advice of legal. Everything, every statement. So I will tell you that I will not purposefully in any way hamper the investigation. I don't believe I have. If somebody wants to point out that's what I'm doing, how am I doing it? And they say, you held a press conference? That doesn't do it. Because that doesn't stop the investigation. The investigators run the investigation, not the media, not me. So I will tell you, I will be double careful in everything I do so that nobody can say I'm impeding the investigation. If this commission sees that that is not happening, mention it to me. We'll talk about it or get your 4 votes. So law is clear. We must follow our own rules, and these are our rules. So yes, I will be as careful as I can be. Holding my wife while she's sobbing was never, ever part of why I came out of retirement, to give my experience to this commission. But yes, I'll hold down the best of my ability and listen to anything anybody has to say. But I'm not going to say I will not vote to represent the people who are paying me to vote on their best interest. I can't do that. So it would be very easy for me to say, yes, I will. I'm going on vacation for 2 weeks. Send me my check. You know that I have enough sand that I can't do that. I will not impede the investigation, is what I can guarantee you.
Is it, in order to ask you a question, Locus? I mean, a process question.
Chair Wellborn, commissioners, you decide what's in order as the chair of the proceeding. I want to be very careful about what I can answer here. It has to be purely about process and divorced from the substance of this particular complaint.
And it is, I believe, and I'll start down the path, and if you give me a nod to the negative, I'll back off. Fair enough?
Fair enough.
Okay. So if hypothetically, if this letter ends up moving forward to the governor, what actions? I mean, does the governor just place one of our members on leave, and do they have any more oversight than that? I mean, is it basically just purely an administrative move, but the rest of it continues in-house here, and it's up to the ACT team to do their due diligence, but, you know, take their time and do it with getting the job done, or because truly, I mean, I'm not, well, I guess go ahead and answer that, and then I'll share concerns if I feel a need to with the commission.
What I can tell you, Chair Wellborn and commissioners, is that to the best of my knowledge, to the best of any other attorney's knowledge that I'm aware of, this statute has never been used before. So exactly what the governor's process is afterward, I can't say. I simply don't know. I don't have precedent to refer you to. The commission's workplace investigation will eventually need to come to a conclusion. So I anticipate that in an abstract hypothetical sense, having nothing to do with this particular case, that the commission will eventually need to tie up any sort of workplace investigation that it conducts. I don't know if that answers your question, but I don't know if I can say
Sort of,
more.
but well, I believe so. I guess my question is the executive branch able to weigh in on the discussion any further than just administratively placing someone on leave, or can they enter in and you know what I mean, change the timeline of things, getting this thing done and through the process? I mean, do they have any role other than placing a person on leave? But then do they have any statutory or constitutional authority to take it any further than that from that office?
I think I understand your question now, Commissioner Wellborn, Chair Wellborn. Thank you for that additional clarification. No. Title 69, Chapter 1, Section 113 is the only section of Montana law that I'm aware of that gives the governor's office any input into any commission process. And so the commission's internal workplace investigation remains an internal matter.
One final question. So with that being said, do you know, is in the event that we were all of a sudden found ourselves a 4-member commission because of the governor's actions, would he have the ability to appoint somebody, or are we still a 4-member commission?
Chair Wellborn, I don't have the statute in front of me at the moment to refer to. What happens in the event of a suspension, administrative leave, absent a full removal? I don't know that it is well defined in the statute, so I don't know that I could provide any particular insight on how that would pan out.
Go ahead, as long as it offers context to my question.
Well, I want to go a bit before. My question was, can somebody explain to me how President Molnar slowed up the process? I think that deserves a good answer. Did he stand in front of a door preventing them from having a meeting? For this ACT team to say, we're sending this letter to the governor because he slowed the process down without explaining to me what is it that he did to slow the process down when he doesn't even know what he's being accused of. I don't think he blocked a door to a meeting, and something else the ratepayer should be concerned about here. You're paying for this. This ACT team has a responsibility to move quickly to save you money, and getting the governor involved just costs you more. And I didn't get a clear answer. What is it that President Molnar did to slow this process down? I'm more concerned that they're dragging it out on purpose, because that looks more apparent to me than President Molnar slowing it down. So could I please get an answer from Lucas or someone on this question? Thank you.
So much as you can.
Okay, if you'd like me to address Commissioner Pinocchi's question, Commissioner Pinocchi, if you read the complaint to the governor that explains the request for administrative leave, you'd see that there are 8 points where the response team identified a pattern of activity designed to derail the investigation and prevent the department from properly addressing the complaints. Among these actions, Commissioner Molnar, number 1, threatened retaliation against anyone involved. You heard testimony about that earlier today from public commenter. Number 2, he claimed he is not subject to the policies adopted by the Public Service Commission to regulate appropriate workplace conduct by commissioners. So there was a lot of back and forth between the attorneys on that question, which tied up our attorney who was counseling the response team, and then had to turn their attention to address Commissioner Molnar's and his counsel's claims that policies don't apply to them or him. Commissioner Molnar declined to participate in the fact-finding phase of the investigation and just meet with the investigators for the independent review, in part because he was not allowed to confront and cross-examine his accusers, which is not a process that occurs when you're simply trying to gather information. It's not a trial. There's been no charges pressed. So our attorney had to explain the procedures and where we were at with this process again to President Molnar's attorney. And there was quite a bit of argument back and forth between President Molnar and his attorney and what our attorney was telling them. I have this letter from President Molnar's attorney from a few days ago that says, Commissioner Molnar is not beholden to your response team and certainly not subject to your attempts to muzzle him. Commissioner Molnar will not be sidelined, or subjected to your procedural gamesmanship. So, we're trying to explain that there's a procedure here and what those procedures are, and so that we can follow the laws. And his attorney representing him continues to argue back and forth about these things. So that takes time. That slows it down. On July 29th, Commissioner Molnar went outside in front and held a press conference on this, which was a HR manager matter. And, as I said earlier, a commissioner talking to the press is not a capital offense. But when the commissioner uses that opportunity to make statements that would discourage people from participating in the complaint process or in the investigation process or from being a witness in the process, and then you take that together with his initial threat to take out anyone involved in this, there's a pattern of things that built up to finally lead us to believe that, yeah, he was clearly trying to silence other voices and claiming that it was his First Amendment right to do so. To me, it's kind of like we've all got the right to keep and bear arms unless we're a convicted felon, but you can't walk into the building and wave your gun around and point it at people. And the First Amendment right to free speech is similar. You have to be careful with what you say, especially in the workplace. He made public comments about the investigation and about the complaints that were dismissive, untruthful, and could easily be construed as retaliatory towards complainants and those involved. He demanded that the investigation be terminated. He tried multiple ways to terminate the investigation. He demanded it through his counsel. He put in the work session request to negate the contracts. He said, I will not sign off on these. I will not allow the payment to be processed. He denied a claim for payment for services already rendered. So he has tried to stop it in multiple ways. And then again filed that work session request to negate the contract. So there's been a number of things that have happened that made us finally realize on October 15th that, hey, this is a clear pattern. And clearly, we've had to deal with all these things. The press conference, for one, was something where the investigators had to then go listen to the recordings and determine if he said anything that was retaliatory against any of the people involved in the process. And so every time he goes to the media on this, it has to be looked at to see what he is saying that may be construed as something that's a liability risk to the agency and may be construed as retaliation against those that are involved in the process. So there's been a number of things. Now, the alternative would have been to simply sit down with the reviewer and say, what's the issue? What's the problems? Tell me about it, answer some questions, and and move on from there. Really, it didn't need to come to this, but the moment President Molnar threatened retaliation against members of this agency staff, and then took actions, legal actions, that required the response team to then have to secure legal counsel too, because he had secured legal counsel. So we had to secure legal counsel to speak counsel to counsel and make sure that that those conversations were kept within the confines of proper laws and where we're at. So there's a number of things that have slowed this down, and none of it is because the response team wanted it slowed down. It was because we had to respond to a variety of different unexpected elements that were placed in our way.
Mr.
I have a quick question, if I could, I'm just burning to do this. The same letter.
Very succinctly, please.
Succinct as it gets. In the footnotes from the letter she writes. Who helped you write this? Commissioner, who helped you write the letter? I'm sure you didn't do legal footnotes.
Mr. President, I had the assistance of legal counsel in constructing this letter and review of response team members.
Okay. Let's take a look at the footnotes.
Mm-hmm.
Footnote 4. Details pending completion of investigation.
Yes.
That goes to the retaliation.
Right.
I don't remember saying I can take out anybody I want to, and I don't remember anybody saying I took anybody out or tried to take anybody out.
Yes.
So next, attachment 2. Unfortunate email to Christensen. My attorney wrote an email to the opposing attorney who was hired, frankly, before I hired mine. That's why I did it. Attachment 2, unfortunate email to Christensen. Then we have a couple of news articles. I am not going to say they are accurate. I'm not going to say they were not accurate. Attachment 2, unfortunate email to Christensen. Attachment 2, number 10, unfortunate email to Christensen. I respectfully submit that not only can you not suspend somebody without 4 votes that are public, you can't suspend them because their attorney wrote an email that you don't like.
Yeah.
He has an obligation to defend me. She has an obligation to the commission, and attorneys writing emails to attorneys is never pleasant, and it's never reason for suspension. It doesn't exist. I can't even tell you what those emails say. I have 10 of them. They might be this. They all go to due process.
Yes. If you'd like me to respond, I can.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. So footnote 4 is regarding the held a press conference to blow up publicity on an otherwise confidential, or no, excuse me, it's not that one. It is threatened retaliation against anyone involved. And then it's footnoted number 4, details pending completion of investigation. Those details will come out in the as the investigation is completed and as the report is completed. But all I can tell you at this point about it is that, and I said this earlier, that the independent review did substantiate there is evidence that retaliation occurred. It wasn't just threatened, but it actually occurred. And so those details will be forthcoming when the investigation process is completed and the report is made and available. But I wasn't able to put those details in at this point because this letter to the governor is not about the conduct. It's about the administrative leave so that we can complete the process. And I think all of these footnotes are examples of how much time and effort it has taken to address President Molnar's attorney. And yes, President Molnar, you did obtain an attorney before the agency did on this. We had secured an outside review from this HR firm that the agency's worked with several times in the past. But once you obtain counsel, the HR firm said we needed to have counsel to guide this process as well. They didn't want to act alone without having legal counsel that had HR experience involved in the process.
With all due respect, my remembrance is Lucas came to my office and said there's been an investigation. I said, into what? He said, professional misconduct. I said, how's that defined? He said, it's not. He said, and we retain counsel. I didn't even ask who at that time. But later, it appeared to me that this was a railroad job, and I hired an attorney. So as to who hired who what first, I maintain my story as to what I was told, and you can have yours, but it has nothing to do with do you have 4 votes to ask the governor to suspend until an investigation that's 90 days old somehow miraculously goes forward. You had 12 days while I was recouping from eye surgery. No investigation, or what you're talking about would take more than 12 days when you're talking about newspaper clippings. No, I cannot say that anything you've said is germane or on point to my motion that due to the lack of 4 votes in a public forum, the letter should come back. Get your 4 votes and send it to the governor. It's that simple.
Yes, Mr. Chairman and Mr. President, I was asked to answer questions that another commissioner posed, so that's what I did. And I do have the document here dated June 19th where Lucas Hamilton communicated to you that Greg Ross of Communications and Management Services has been retained to conduct an independent review. He may be contacting you in the coming weeks to schedule a time for an interview. And so that was the process of the response team, was to get an outside HR firm to assist us in conducting the review. And Mr. Hamilton's here, and I think can probably confirm the timing of when council was secured, if that's an issue that you want clarification on, because it's not what I said versus what you said. It's actually the facts versus what you're saying and representing here that just don't add up.
Mr. Chair, if I may, not to address that, but to correct something I said earlier about the text of the statute and to directly answer your question, 69-1-113 says in the pertinent part here, upon complaint made and good cause shown, the governor may suspend any commissioner, and if, in the governor's judgment, the exigencies of the case require, the governor may appoint temporarily some competent person to perform the duties of the suspended commissioner during the period of suspension. So I believe that addresses your question about what happens to the commission in that event.
Yep.
Mr. Chairman, that was the word I was looking for a moment ago. Good cause shown. That my attorney wrote an email 4 or 5 times is the good cause shown. That is not good cause. Pending details, pending investigation is not good cause shown. I am frankly embarrassed that we had legal staff write a letter that says due process will not be considered, constitutional rights will not be considered. We will consider whether or not an email was sent from one attorney to another. It takes 4 votes, and that's why. This is a very, very high standard for a very, very high accusation. So splitting the baby might not work here. It's not about what I might do in the future. I've already told you that I will double toe the line and you bring your concerns to me. It's about a letter being recalled that is filled with innuendo, a lack of investigation, not a single fact, and a complaint about emails and some articles in the newspaper that I haven't read, and it wouldn't make any difference because I didn't write them. That's what this is about. Is this letter, is that ham-handed? Ask the governor. I mean, all he's going to do if he doesn't want to do it is sit on it and wait for the thing to play out. If you, I cannot imagine, other than he has a very stated preference for commissioners being appointed, and this will give him a chance to appoint one. I cannot imagine that his counsel would recommend that he overturn an election based on an incomplete investigation and no proof whatsoever that I have cost this investigation 1 minute, $1. It's not there. You just sort of said. They keep going back to retaliation. And that if you look at a press conference this way or that, put it into court. It's illegal. Put it into court and see if they think that a press conference is retaliation.
Commissioner Panochi, did you have something else?
Well, it's important for me to understand, did the Public Service Commission hire outside counsel before President Molnar? And here's why. I'm thinking of the ratepayer. The ratepayer wants me to watch out for their rates. And I do not want the Public Service Commission to hire outside counsel because it winds up going to your rates. If this is over a bad joke or he said he was El Presidente, that is something that could have been handled internally without spending thousands of dollars of outside counsel. So this is important to me because I promised the ratepayer I'd look out for your rates. And again, I had no say in whether or not we hired outside counsel. And I would have asked a couple of questions like, what did he do? And is this something that our own attorneys internally could tackle? All right. And if this ACT team made a decision to hire an attorney to cause the ratepayer rates to go up, without the other commissioners understanding, maybe we should have approved this. That's the whole point why you have commissioners, right? Your elected commissioners have to have an approval before we spend money like this. And here money was spent. I wasn't even aware of it. I wasn't even made known what he was being accused of. Was there a good reason to pay tens of thousands of dollars? And who knows what this bill is going to wind up being. Now, I heard Vice President Fielder say she retained counsel first. Then I've heard she's retained counsel second. Lucas, can I ask you, did this ACT team retain counsel before or after President Molnar did?
Chair Wellborn, Commissioner Panochi, I don't know when President Molnar retained his counsel, but I can tell you that Christensen Prezo Law executed its retainer agreement with the Commission on June 27th, 2025.
Your counsel.
I don't remember exactly. The press conference was the end of July, and it was a couple of weeks before that. I do remember Lucas telling me that they had hired that firm. He was familiar with their work, and he hired an attorney that he respected. It was after that I figured if R5 Legal can't handle this, then, and this person is who they picked, then I need an attorney. It's no different than anything else we do as elected officials. It wasn't that long ago that the determination of a case before the Commission of Political Practices was determined by the appointment of the governor. If you were a Democrat and as a Republican commissioner, you were guilty. If you were a Republican and you had a Democrat commissioner, you were guilty. They have the capacity to choose to get the desired outcome. When you hire a DEI attorney to judge anything I said, I'm going to lose. So, I really don't know how much more we can get into this. I mean, we're down. It doesn't make any difference the date I hired. What makes a difference is you don't have 4 signatures. You don't have a public meeting. You didn't know because they didn't, as required, have a public meeting on the contracts, or at least between the commissioners in a closed session. Something. That's why you didn't know. This whole thing has been in the darkness for so long. It has turned into some sort of an evil beast where there's no desire even for truth when truth doesn't matter. When I hired my attorney or not is not important. If he's pro bono, it's not important. What's important is they did it without contracts verified by the commission. They did it without 4 votes, and they did it without a public meeting. That's why it has to come back. All the rest is superfluous. How many press conferences I had is superfluous. Whether if I didn't have any, it would be, why didn't you respond and defend yourself? I didn't think I had to. Well, you had missed your opportunity. No, I did what I thought I had to do to defend constitutional integrity. How many times in the Senate did you hear me get up and talk about constitutional integrity? I lost every vote, but I never gave up talking about constitutional integrity. I'm the same guy. I would not be going through this other than to protect the rights of everybody in this commission, to due process and constitutional integrity. And there is nothing in this that is not shot to pieces based on constitutional arguments by my attorney. There is not a single scintilla of concern for the constitutional rights of me or anybody else in what currently exists as the response team. As Lucas will tell you, if we wanted to, we have 2 commissioners, 1 staff. I am protecting their rights. I've gone up and beyond, and at least one of these is a severe allegation. I'm protecting their right. I demand the same protection. And in this case, it's contracts that are signed by the commission, okayed by the commission, 4 votes, and 1 public meeting. That's not a lot. Pull the letter back, have your vote, and turn it around in 2 days.
Further discussion? Go ahead.
Well, a legal question has been raised by our president, and I wonder if our legal counsel can answer that. Is the response team process and the request for administrative leave before the governor, is that in violation of any laws?
Chair Wellborn and Vice President Fielder, I think that gets into the realm of the specific subject matter of this complaint, and it is ultimately the subject of a dispute right now, pending in front of the governor between the commission's response team's complaint to the governor and the answer from President Molnar's private attorney. So I think that'll be worked out.
Okay, so I guess that is a good point, Mr. Chairman. The final decision maker on this administrative leave is not the attorney. It's not the response team. The decision maker is the governor, who has been, through his counsel, requesting arguments from both parties, President Molnar through his counsel and the response team through our counsel. So the governor is weighing those arguments, and the complaint is before him. And if he finds the arguments compelling, a compelling state interest to protect employees from continued retaliation and to protect the integrity of the investigative process without further disruption, then I think the governor will probably find in favor of the response team's recommendation. If he thinks the response team's recommendation is unlawful and way out there, then he'll find against that recommendation. So that's where it rests now, and there is plenty of process being offered to both parties in that scenario.
Is it, would somebody perhaps call for the question?
Mr. Chairman, I'll call for the question.
Question has been called. Let's do a roll call vote, please. And Patricia, just for the record, would you repeat what the actual motion was, just to refresh us?
President Molnar moved that the letter to the governor be rescinded, or recalled.
All right. What do we want to do this? Start at one end of the, Commissioner Bukasek,
Nay.
Commissioner Fielder,
Nay.
Commissioner Pinochi, President Molnar,
Yes.
and I vote no. Nay. So 3-2. Motion fails 2-3. So before we get done, there was someone that walked in late that would makes a request to make public comment. Please come to the podium or to the chair. Thank you.
I'm so sorry. I'll start all over. Lisa Bennett, Bennett, Carbon County. I am a constituent of President Brad Molnar. And I have no idea what the allegations are. I mean, I've heard things. I don't know who's right and wrong. I'm not choosing sides on this issue, but I do have grave concerns with the entire process. And I highly recommend a couple things. First, for just a point of order, Vice President Fielder made a lot of accusations when she should have used the word alleged, because none of this has been proven. So everything from whatever may have been interference on behalf of Molnar is at this point an accusation. And the fact that it was made as an accusation instead can cause, I think, legal concern on how President Molnar decides to proceed with that. So just as a word of caution, I think we should be using the word alleged, because none of us know what the truth is at this point without a hearing. As far as the process, we keep on referring to this policy that you're following. Your oath is to the U.S. Constitution, so I side completely with President Molnar on the fact that we need transparency and due process. And if your policy violates the rights of the U.S. Constitution, then your policy needs to be thrown out and rewritten. You need to consider the balance of protecting a whistleblower against the due process that's owed to the accused. How can you expect, Chairman Wellborn, for someone to be contrite or to apologize when they don't even have the facts of what they're being accused of? I think that's a big problem with everything that I've heard today, is that there isn't any transparency in here. And we've got groups making accusations instead of allegations that lead someone, especially the press or general public who doesn't know any better, to believe that someone is guilty before they've really been given due process. And that's what I particularly have a problem with. I think that you guys are trying to do the best that you can, but we need to be accountable and fair. And we can't deny any public official who then denies me, the voter, my rights. If he gets removed, it's not only the Montana Public Service Commission vote that's lost, but the other commissions that he might be on regionally or nationally that we lose a vote on as well. So to say that this is not a matter that affects whether it's the merger with Northwest and Black Hills Energy or other things, I don't think can be overlooked, because the impact goes beyond. And I think that the constituents in his area deserve better than to have his voice silenced simply on accusations at this point. And the fact that something was brought to the governor on accusations without an internal hearing first is extremely disappointing, especially to our constitutional rights and principles. So I'm just going to leave it to say that I don't think you're building trust. I think you're destroying it with your policy that you keep on focusing on. And I think your policy and whoever wrote it was extremely destructive and did not take our foundational principles from our Constitution into effect. And I am dramatically upset about that.
Any other public comment? None online or in the room? All right, thanks for everybody's time and attention this afternoon. Meeting adjourned.
Our afternoon meeting has been canceled.